In this video, we're going to talk about the MVC pattern in Ruby on Rails. So obviously, as you probably know, MVC stands for Model View Controller. It's simply a software design pattern. It's a way we design software in a certain way that is more organized. It's a way to write code, but it's not really a technical concept. What I mean by that is that it's not like a concept like databases or like algorithms or something that you need to train or something that you need to learn really over time. I want you to think about it as you have three doors or three buckets. Basically, every time you write code in Ruby on Rails or any MVC framework, you're gonna either put it in the model or view or controller. And let's say that before we wrote pretty much everything in one place. I don't know if you ever wrote code in WordPress, for example. In those applications and code bases where you don't use a software design pattern like MVC, well, you will have a big file that is responsible for many things like connecting to the database, querying the data from the database, and then handling requests with parameters and the user data or the user input, and then taking that data and doing some manipulation with it and then rendering it back to the user in HTML format. And that obviously at first can seem like convenient because you don't have to organize different types of files, but very quickly you're going to be overwhelmed with all the features and the concepts that are inside one file, and your file obviously is going to be super large and very hard to maintain and to read, etc. So what MVC does is separation of concerns. We have three types of files. We have models, we have controllers, and we have views. And the model is basically the database modeling. So it's an equivalent of the table in the database. And so it has everything that is related to connecting to the database, to the right table, and it handles the queries. So we organize everything that is related to that in one file. And in Rails, for example, it's usually just called the name of the model.rb or the name of the table in singular. So the table is products and then your model is product. Then you have the controller, and the controller is responsible for handling the incoming request from the user and taking his inputs and whatever he asked for. Let's say, for example, search filters. And then the controller is going to connect to the model and the database, so through the model. Then it's going to serve the request or the result to the view. And the view is just going to be responsible for getting that data and displaying it to the user. And this is really, really convenient because the fact that we have things separated in different types of files let us have like a very organized code, and so smaller files to deal with. And whenever we have smaller files to deal with, well, we have more mental bandwidth, and that allows us to actually work on solving a problem or really crafting a feature, knowing that we don't have to deal with all of these things. And especially when you're just starting with web development and programming, I remember that it's a concept that really helped me because the files looked clean and every concept was tied to one file. So I knew that the concept of database, for example, was mostly living in the model. So I knew that when I was working with views, it usually didn't have anything to do with the database. So here I have a very simple app. So it's just a task manager. I generated it with cursor, and if we go here, it's a very basic CRUD app. So we have a list of tasks and we can check the details of the task. We have other actions, but I don't think they're implemented, but that's good enough just to have a picture of what we're looking at. And so the first thing we want to check so is the work tree. And so the models are usually in the model folder, and here we have a task model, and here we can see a lot of notions that are related to the database. So validations when we're creating the record, scopes are ways to query the database that are pre-saved, let's say. And then we have the controller. So if I go to controllers and task controller, here we have different methods. So those are the ones that are handling the user incoming request and then talking to the model, to the database through the model, and then serving it. So for example, here we have the index action. So it's going to be tied to the index view of the task. So this is basically this page. And so here a good way to see this is that we can actually split our view here, and this is actually sometimes helpful when you're developing, is to know that usually when you'll create a feature, you'll start working with the model. Usually you'll create a model in the database, usually using something like race-generated model, and that will create the model and the migration that will create the table. And after that, you'll actually work with the controller. But the thing here, the controller usually works with the routes. So a notion in Ruby on Rails and in a lot of MVC frameworks are routes. And so those are usually coming together because here when we are defining a route, for example, for tasks, that tells Ruby on Rails that it's allowing this request to come in, and that is going to call the tasks controller in the index action. So there's a little bit of Rails magic, but in a previous video I did on routes, you can learn more about how these routes are created here and how they're tied with the index or the actions in general in the controller. But yeah, when I'm developing, I work on models first, and then I open the routes, and then I create the actions in the controller, creating the controller obviously, and then I work on the views, and the views are actually the ones that are receiving those variables that are declared here, for example, and we can use them to display the data in the view. I'm gonna do it like real quick here. The workflow usually is like this. So let's say I'm gonna create a new feature about companies that are gonna be tied to tasks or client, let's say. And so here I'm gonna take a very simple example where I'm gonna create a model and a table that only has a name field. I'm not in the right folder, task manager. So there you go. Here we have our migration that is going to create the database when we're going to run Rails DB migrate. And here we have our model. So I'll put it here, and then this as well here. We don't need to check this. And so this is going to add the table in the database, right? Actually, if we check the schema here, we don't have a client table, but I'm gonna run the migration and it's gonna create the table, clients table. And so if I had to continue this feature, I will then create a controller. So I'll go here and create the clients controller. I did it before, just to demonstrate, I will just create clients controller. Oh, actually, I would create the route first. So I will just come here and let's remove everything about tasks right now. Here, I will go here and I will do resources clients exactly, and then I would create the controller, clients controller, and then I'll create, and And then finally, I'll create the view. So let me just put it here, and in views, create the clients folder. I already did it. And so let me remove this here. I recorded this tutorial previously, and I decided to record it again, so that's why I have these things already created. And so in views, I'm gonna create index.html.erb in the clients folder. It's important. And so yeah, here I can just, for demonstration purposes, I can just say clients, and here we're gonna iterate over the clients array, but for now there's no clients, so we're just gonna see clients. And if I really wanted to check real quick that this is plugged in to the database that is queried here, then I'll just create a client quickly through the console, and there we go, we created the client. So here we're gonna have awesome client. That's pretty much it. I hope this helps you understand the concept of model view controller in Ruby on Rails. Obviously I'm not going into any details, but the goal really is to give you the big picture, and this is the goal of this tutorial series. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. If you liked this tutorial, give it a thumbs up, and yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.